Imagine this: more than 250 heirs, 7 generations, and one family name that still holds serious money and serious influence in society. At his peak, John D. Rockefeller controlled wealth equal to 1.5% of the entire U.S. economy, around $435 billion in today's 2025 terms. This is the story of the one American dynasty that broke a rule almost every wealthy family eventually falls victim to. In this video, we're going to unpack how they did it with a clear breakdown of the system they built. By the end, you'll see that the real secret isn't just being rich, it's thinking like an institution, not like an individual. There's an old saying, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. Grandpa builds the business, dad coasts, and the grandkids are back to square one. Around 90% of family wealth is gone by the 3rd generation, thanks to taxes, bad investments, overspending, lawsuits, and family drama. Rockefellers have kept their collective wealth, their influence, and a massive philanthropic footprint going for over 7 generations by making one key decision. Instead of asking, "How rich am I?" they asked, "How strong is the structure that protects this wealth?" Let's start at the beginning of the story. John D. Rockefeller builds Standard Oil in 1870. At its peak, Standard Oil controls about 90% of all U.S. oil refining and pipelines. He becomes the richest man of his era and one of the wealthiest individuals in history. The U.S. government starts creating estate tax laws specifically designed to break up giant fortunes like his. At one point, the estate tax rate on very large estates climbs as high as 77%. Every time the wealth passes from one generation to the next, the government can take more than 3/4 of it. Do that 2 or 3 times, and the fortune is basically gone. So when John D. Rockefeller dies, his son, John D. Rockefeller Jr., doesn't just inherit money. He inherits a problem. His solution is powerful and simple. The Rockefellers will stop thinking of themselves as accumulators and start thinking of themselves as stewards. The first big move the Rockefellers make is moving the wealth into structures called dynasty trusts. Here's the simple version. Instead of the money passing directly from person to person, it sits inside a legal container that can last for multiple generations. The family members don't personally own the entire pile of assets. They are beneficiaries of the trust. This has 3 huge advantages. First, it protects the fortune from estate taxes. If the assets stay inside the trust instead of being transferred outright to each new generation, you can legally avoid having the entire pile taxed over and over again. Second, it protects the wealth from lawsuits and creditors. If an individual heir gets divorced, sued, or goes bankrupt, the trust is much harder to attack. Third, it protects the money from the heirs themselves. No single reckless family member can decide to liquidate everything and spend it. They also did something very smart with control. Instead of putting a random relative in charge, they appointed an institutional trustee, a professional bank with strict fiduciary duties. That means the people running the trust are legally required to act in the best interest of the beneficiaries and the trust itself, not in the interest of one loud cousin. Second, let's move from the legal structure to the day-to-day management. Most families handle their finances in a very basic way. A financial advisor here, an accountant there, maybe a lawyer on the side, and a lot of decisions made on impulse or tradition. The Rockefellers built an institution whose only job was to manage the family's financial universe. This is called a family office. It started after the breakup of Standard Oil, as a simple accounting service to organize all the pieces of the fortune. Over time, it evolved into a sophisticated, multi-armed operation. It became the control center for everything with the Rockefeller name on it. But here's the most important part. The office didn't just manage assets. It also helped train the heirs. This means the family office educated younger generations about how the wealth worked, what the structures were, and what being a good steward meant. Third, let's talk about diversification, the "don't put all your eggs in one basket" rule. John D. Rockefeller made his original fortune by doing exactly that, putting almost everything into oil and dominating that market. But in 1911, the U.S. government forced Standard Oil to break up. On paper, this looked like a punishment. In reality, it turned into one of the greatest diversification events in financial history. Standard Oil was split into 34 different companies that evolved into companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, and BP. Instead of owning one giant business, The Rockefellers now held shares in many separate companies that would later become giants in their own right. This did two things. It dramatically lowered the risk of one single company collapse wiping them out. And as these new companies grew and the market began to value them independently, the combined value of all their holdings actually increased. From there, the family office used the growing capital base to diversify even further. They invested in real estate, including the massive Rockefeller Center project in New York. Fourth, we come to one of the cleverest ideas in the Rockefeller playbook, the family bank. The Rockefeller model asks a simple question: why should our heirs be sending interest payments to outside banks when we have capital inside our own structure? So instead of going to a regular bank, a Rockefeller who wants to buy a house or start a business might borrow from the family trust or a family-controlled entity. They still pay a fair, market-rate interest, but the interest goes back into the family's own system. That interest becomes fuel for the dynasty. It compounds inside the trust and benefits future generations instead of enriching outside shareholders. But the family bank is not a free money machine. It's a discipline tool. To get a loan, family members have to present a plan. This forces heirs to think like entrepreneurs and investors. It also keeps the wealth circulating inside the bloodline. So the family bank does two jobs at once. It is a source of credit for family members, and it is a training system that teaches them to approach money with seriousness and accountability. Fifth, let's get to the human side. Because you can have perfect legal structures and brilliant investment strategies and still lose everything if the people are chaotic. The Rockefellers understood this deeply. John D. Rockefeller Jr. was especially focused on avoiding spoiled, entitled children. He believed that easy money could easily destroy character. So he imposed a very strict, very intentional system at home. The children wore hand-me-down clothes. They shared toys. They didn't get automatic pocket money. They earned it. They got paid for chores like mending things around the house, practicing music seriously, or even killing flies. But earning the money was only part one. Part two was tracking it. Every child had to keep a detailed ledger. They wrote down every cent they earned, every cent they spent, and they followed rules about how to divide it. Some had to be saved. Some had to be given away to charity. Only a portion could be spent freely. This is one of the biggest differences between the Rockefellers and other famous dynasties that fell apart in public. Sixth, let's look at philanthropy. For the Rockefellers, charity wasn't just about writing nice checks. It was a strategic response to a reputation problem and a long-term investment in influence. Early on, the Rockefeller name was tied to harsh business practices and public anger. John D. Rockefeller Jr. knew that if the family wanted to survive and stay relevant, that reputation had to change. So the family gave away huge sums of money in a highly organized way. Over time, the Rockefeller name became attached to some of the most respected institutions in the world: universities, hospitals, museums, and research organizations. Seventh, the Rockefellers didn't just live in the world of bank statements and legal documents. They left physical marks on the map and cultural marks in society. Rockefeller Center in New York is a perfect example. Even though ownership structures have changed over time, the complex is still associated with the Rockefeller name. It's part of the family's brand, visible to millions of people. The family also invested heavily in cultural capital, like museums and arts. That ingrained the Rockefeller name in the world of culture and high society. And perhaps one of the most strategic moves was the land donation for the United Nations headquarters in New York. John D. Rockefeller Jr. bought the land and gave it to the UN. That decision physically tied the Rockefeller legacy to the center of global diplomacy. These physical and cultural assets are important because they can't just be chopped up and spent during a family argument. They are durable symbols. They keep the name alive in a positive way generation after generation. If you're watching this, you may not be a Rockefeller, but the principles still scale down. The key shift is this: stop thinking only in terms of how rich can I be in my lifetime and start thinking in terms of what system can I build that will protect and empower the people I care about long after I'm gone. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more updates, and tell me in the comments what you're seeing where you're living. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.